Welcome to the Combat Sports Report. I am here with Randy Baker, coming off his performance at Who's Number One. Randy, how you doing, brother?
Hey, good. How are you, man?
I'm good. I'm good. I appreciate you taking the time. I know you're a busy guy. I mean, I always see you behind a broadcast camera or on the mat, so I appreciate you taking the time.
Good, sir. Happy to be here.
So, I guess first and foremost, could you kind of just give me a little bit about your background? You're recently got your black belt. Fighting on Who's Number One. I feel like I see you all over the place. You're traveling for work. Can you kind of just round yourself out as a person as opposed to a competitor? What does your work-life balance look like?
Yeah, so I've been doing jiu-jitsu for January will be 12 years now. I started at Dark Side in Houston, Texas. That's where I got my black belt as well. That's where I'm at now. It's pretty much all I've done since I was 15 years old. So there isn't really much of a balance because that's all I've done. Basically, I work so I can pay for jiu-jitsu. And what I do now, I work in the audiovisual field as a freelancer. And so that allows me to train and to travel because I have the flexibility with my schedule. So basically, I'll take work when I can. If it interferes with some type of competition, I can turn down the work if need be, and so I can kind of balance it out like that. But basically, I work so I can pay for training and competing.
Gotcha. I feel like a lot of guys, it's very common to speak to fighters and say, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" And guys are moving couches, man. Guys are digging holes. Guys are doing all types of physical things. So, did you set out on this path where you wanted to become a black belt and you knew you would need to supplement that with an easier schedule, or did it all just kind of fall together for you?
Yeah, I mean, it all just kind of fell together. You mean like in terms of not finding a physical job, or
I guess freelancing audio video,
yeah?
that's not really a common field. I mean, I feel like you kind of have to purposefully set down that path.
Yeah, well, that's what my dad does for a living. He's been doing that pretty much his entire life, my entire life, and once he got into the freelancing part of it, I realized, oh, that actually works really well with my schedule, and I can make a decent amount of money. Not obviously not great, but a living and enough to fund my lifestyle to train and compete.
Gotcha. So you said you've always been with Dark Side from white to black, correct?
Yes, yep. First
Oh,
day was that dark side.
gotcha. So I guess what is it specifically about Dark Side that made you stick around? I mean, it's kind of a balance of finding technique that works for you and a culture that fits. Did you know that it was a fit right off the rip, or did you just kind of get addicted to the jujitsu?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much. Really, back when we first started, or when I first started, Dark Side was pretty new. I got there just under the first year anniversary, and it was the only nogi only gym in Houston, and one of the only few in Texas. And and I knew I didn't really want to train in the gi. I had no desire for it. Probably at first, I wanted to be a UFC fighter, like most people who get into jujitsu, and so the gi just never really intrigued me. And then my coach was kind of responsible for bringing leg locks to Texas. He's a black belt under Dean Lister. And so especially back then, this is 10, 12 years ago, no one was doing leg locks. Even at the highest level, it was pretty rarely seen. So we were going to like local Nagas and just killing everybody with leg locks back at the time when people were saying leg locks weren't working. So that, that kind of being like the dark horse in the jiu-jitsu world, both being nogi only and we're doing leg locks, that's what kind of drove me to stick with dark side, and the fact that we were winning with things that people said weren't working.
Gotcha. So you must have had a crazy experience when the metas kind of changed. That's the vernacular, right? The meta changed, and everybody started going for heel hooks. So I mean, did you feel that you just were so far advanced, people were having a hard time catching up, or was there a point where you were like, "Oh, guys are starting to get hip to this"?
Yeah, I mean, obviously for the first few years, we were ahead of pretty much everyone, at least on the local scene. We never really had like big guys going to ADCC or WNO, at least back when I started. Um, but then so then now these newer guys, these blue purple belts, are savvy with their leg lock. So now we have to also adjust with that. But for a good while, it was pretty much us, and we were just killing everyone. We would go to a local Naga with 15 guys, bring home 20 gold medals in the team trophy, when other teams were bringing 50 people, but we were just subbing everybody with leg locks.
Nice, man. Nice. So I guess you kind of touched on who's number one. So I mean, between your white belt leg lock run and now you're at the highest levels basically. So I guess what did your journey look like? Did you set out on this path to kind of be, a nationally renowned competitor, or was it just kind of, baby steps and here we are?
It was not really until I got to about purple belt, when I started like kind of winning more and more. Um, and that when I was, and that was also around the time like EBI started becoming popular. So like Gary Tonin and Gordon Ryan were actually making a living off of doing it. Because back when I first started, the only way to really make a living was if you owned a gym. No one was really making a living as a competitor. So as we saw more and more people actually able to make not just a living, but a comfortable living as a competitor, I was like, oh, maybe I can start shifting a little bit more towards that.
Gotcha. Okay. So I guess specifically about who's number one, how did that relationship come to be? Did your coach put in a good word for you? Did they just reach out to you based on a performance? I mean, how did you get to this point?
So that's a funny one. I harassed the matchmaker, Ricardo Amendolia. He's also the commentator. I harassed him on Instagram for like a year straight. Anytime he would post about the next WNO, I'm like, get me on it, get me on it. I'll put on a show. Every time him or on the Flow Grappling Instagram page, they'd say, hey, who do you want to see on the next Who's Number One? I'd have like 15 of my teammates just spam tag me in the comments to get me on there. And it finally happened.
That's the way to do it, man. I say it all the time. The squeaky wheel gets the grease. I mean, it's just about staying vocal, and especially if you have like a network of people that are saying, "Hey, we want to watch this guy." I mean, that's the way to
Yep.
do it.
Yep.
So, I have to ask about the experience overall. So, who's number one is a little unique. They do the press conference there. Is that something you're familiar with, or was this kind of your first time, doing the media side of things?
No, that was the first time doing it kind of to that scale. Yeah, WNO's. I mean, it's a professional show. It's very professional. Everything is laid out. I volunteered for WNO a couple times. My wife does too. So we kind of knew the behind the scenes of how everything works. So we kind of expected it to go that way. But it was good to actually experience it from the competitor side.
Gotcha. And I have to touch on this, man. This is an Instagram clip waiting to happen. So, were you aware of the questions that they were going to ask, or did you just kind of? I'm trying to think of the quote you gave them. You said something about, "I can play on top or bottom. I go both ways," or something like that.
I figured they only gave the prelim matches one question, but I kind of figured I could whatever they asked, I could steer it in that direction. But yeah, I had that planned for about a month.
Oh, okay. So you got it. That line was ready to go.
Yeah,
Love it,
and
man.
no one in the room heard it because the mics weren't set for the room, just the stream. So nobody in the room heard it. I was the only one laughing.
I was gonna say I came across. I'm pretty sure it was you that posted. I came across the clip. I was like, he's either mortified right now, or this was like the best thing that could have happened to him.
Oh
There's
no,
no in between
it was
there.
planned 100%. Those with the jorts, it was 100% planned.
Gotcha. So I guess the match specifically, was this your first outing? I guess as a black belt at this level of stage.
Yeah, I've done a couple. Like I've been to like trials and stuff. But my first tournament as a black belt was West Coast Trials, so that was a fun experience. Um,
Gotcha.
that was the first like big pro show that I did as a black belt.
Gotcha. So I mean, West Coast Trials is obviously a pretty big stage there. So could you kind of speak on? I've heard it so often. Once you become a black belt, you start competing with people who have been a black belt for as long as you've been doing jujitsu. So did you feel like you kind of started over again? It was like being a white belt all over. What was that like for you?
No, not really. Just because for the past few years, probably about so I was the brown belt for a couple years, and it was a couple years into my brown belt that I started doing like these bigger competitions, like Midwest finishers, Zapatero. So I've been going against these guys pretty consistently for the past 3 or 4 years. So it wasn't really a huge step up in competition. It was just, oh, now I actually belong here. I'm not just some brown belt from Houston. I'm a black belt.
Gotcha. Okay. So I guess what's next for you now? I mean, you're performing at a much higher level than average, even as a black belt. I mean, it's very uncommon to see guys that are doing trials, going to who's number one. So I mean, is it all just based on opportunity for you, or do you have kind of a path you're on?
Yeah, I mean, really, it's just any opportunity that comes my way is the path that I'm on. Actually, directly up next, December 15th, I'm going to Cancun for Combat Jiu Jitsu Worlds.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. Same way, got on there. I just harassed the matchmaker and and just had people spam tag me in the comments, and that's how I got that opportunity. It was actually the very first, probably 3 years ago, the very first ADCC trials I ever did. I met Eddie Bravo there and just had a chat with him about doing EBI or combat jiu-jitsu, and he has a private Instagram page, so I sent him a follow request. Hadn't heard anything, never got an acceptance or anything. And then maybe a month ago, that's when I got the follow request accepted and the follow from Eddie Bravo 3 years later. And then the next day, he messaged me asking me if I wanted to be on combat jiu-jitsu.
I mean, he decided to look into it, right? Better late than never. But I guess this weekend coming up in Mexico, it's kind of the who's who, man. You're among some great company here. So is this how do I put this? Is this more of a competitive experience for you and you're kind of just tunnel vision, or do you look forward to these opportunities to kind of speak to people from all over the kind of the world, honestly, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of both. It's really just like getting my name out there. And like, I'm not in the game of asking what ifs. I don't want to look 10 years down the road and be like, man, I should have done that. Oh, I should have gone to Mexico. I should have taken the rematch on WNO. So I'm just here to do it, you know?
Gotcha. Okay. I feel like how do I put this? A lot of guys will kind of get into these gatherings. PFL is a great example. So it's competitors from all over. I've heard day one, everybody's kind of got their headphones on, they're locked in. Around day three, it's like, hey man, you ever want to train together? I'm in town. Do you take advantage of those opportunities like that, or not so
Yeah.
much?
Yeah. What
Okay.
was the exact question?
I said, do you take advantage of those opportunities just being in a room with people that are not necessarily people you train with every single day, but I mean, do you take advantage of the opportunity to go cross train with I don't know, 10th Planet Las Vegas or,
Yeah.
Enzo Gracie Boston?
That's another thing. It's just a great networking opportunity, rubbing elbows with, the top guys in the sport, whether it's competitors or also like other matchmakers. Like maybe I'll be at combat jiu-jitsu and I'll run into someone that runs another event or someone that runs Polaris or something like that, and use that as a networking opportunity for that as well.
Okay. So what is it specifically about jujitsu? Obviously you're doing CJI, so I mean it's not exactly like you're, a gi purist. You started without the gi. So I guess what is it about jujitsu that excites you as opposed to boxing or, another martial art?
I don't have to be athletic. I love being athletic. I am a strength coach as well. So I do love the athletic side, but I also don't have to be athletic. Is There's definitely, which obviously it helps, but it's a puzzle. It's a big puzzle that never changes, and I've always loved puzzles like that. It's just constantly changing. Everything's new every week, every day. Something's new, something's different. Nothing's ever the same.
Gotcha. Okay. And I'm going to turn the floor over to you in a minute. Obviously, give you your chance to give your shout outs and just kind of, speak your mind, say anything you want to say. But I do have to ask, I follow you on Instagram. So obviously I'm seeing what you're posting. What is the frustration with the keto diet? I mean, obviously, like you said, you're a strength coach. We all need carbs to lift, but is it like something specifically about that irritates you?
Yeah, well, saying you follow me on Instagram, there are a lot of different routes you could have gone with that one. We could have started talking about goth chicks or whatever you wanted to. Yeah, so I'm just a big proponent of carbs. They're your main energy source, both physically and your brain as well. Primarily runs on carbs, so I'm just a huge proponent of everyone, but athletes in particular, consuming carbs.
Gotcha. Okay. So the keto diet is dumb. You don't fuel your brain. You heard it here first, guys. But like I said, Randy, the floor is yours. If there's anything you want people to know about you as an individual, as a competitor, if there's anything you want to get out there, any call outs, any shout outs, now's your time.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's it. We covered kind of everything I thought we were going to cover. I'm glad we covered it. And I'm just looking forward to what the rest of my jiu-jitsu journey has.
Well, I'm looking forward to it too. Like I said, I've been following. I started watching, the other day. So, you made a fan out of me. Win, lose or draw. I really do respect the hustle. I respect the effort, especially when, you went kind of a non-traditional route, like you said. A lot of guys are. This is the way you do it, and this is the only way to do it. So to hear somebody that kind of came up, throwing out leg locks, training no gi, it's cool to see the success, man. Very, very happy for you,
Thank you. Thank you.
guys. We'll be right back.